Today I'm going to be showing you how to maintain and put away your kit properly. We're going to be using 3 items. This is a kayak, a helmet and rope. We're going to start with the rope. The first item is rope. To check rope, it's a very simple test. You run it through your hands and as you go, you check it to make sure that there is no visual damage to the cosmetics of it. And as you go as well, you also feel whether it's wet or damp, because if it is, it compromises its strength while you're using it and needs to be dried out before it can be used again. What we're going to be looking for is little tears or frays on the outer skin of the rope, as that can compromise its strength as well. The other thing we want to look out for is long periods of it being left damp, because that can actually damage the inner core of the rope, and that can potentially put lives at risk when you're running a session. So on this particular piece of rope, I checked earlier, and there isn't actually, the only problem I found was the ends of the rope are still damp. In order to prevent this, if you're putting a damp piece of rope away, you're going to do a knot. To do this, you're going to use a knot called a highwayman's hitch or a daisy chain knot. And essentially, this will look something like this, but you will do it across the entire length of the rope, and then you can hang it from one of the beams, and it will dry over a period of time. This will prevent wet getting in. If you're putting the rope away, you're going to flake the rope or coil it, and then you're going to tie a knot, as I will demonstrate now. When you've finished, the rope should look like this. There should be an even space. The rope should be evenly taut, meaning that there's not much space, and then you can either hang it on a hook like that, or you can, if it's dry and you have a dry space to store it, you can store it in a bucket like this. The next piece of kit we're going to check is a helmet. Now this is a kayaking helmet rather than a climbing helmet, so they get damp very often. This is often with either dirty or salt water. Salt water especially will corrode and damage the foam, mainly the foam on the inside of the helmet. So really we should be washing these every time we bring them in. Probably in half an oil drum like that. You could use one of them full of water and just dunk it. Even that will prolong its valid lifespan. And the other thing we're going to do, a bit like the rope, is we're going to do a visual check and run our hands all over the helmet and make sure that there are no deep scratches or anything like that. The other thing we can do is actually push on the inside of the helmet, and what it should do on the kayak helmets, the ears will warp quite easily, but the actual bit around your temple shouldn't warp very easily, as it should maintain its own structure. Now, when we've used these, we should wipe them down to make sure there's no mud, and also clean the inside. Then when we're storing them, we should store them in a dry place, and they should also hopefully be out of sunlight, as that can damage the inside of the helmet rather than the plastic on the outside. The last item we're going to check is the kayak. Now this kayak is actually quite dirty, but when you bring them in you should be cleaning them very thoroughly so that any damage to them is more evident. First off, we're going to check, just before we would take it out, we check that both the foot pegs inside were there, and that they were both not actually flexing too much. We can do that by putting our legs inside the kayak and pushing on them a little bit. What we're also going to want to check is that these 2 bolts here and here are also in the kayak, and that all the screws are done up and nothing seems too loose. The next thing we're going to do is make sure both the straps at the back of the seat are on, and that the 2 straps going inside are also there. What we also want to do is check that the airbags are both in and pumped up, which these aren't. We can pump them up through this, and then we want to make sure that this valve is closed so that no air escapes while we are kayaking. Once we've pumped up these airbags, we want to push them as far back into the kayak as possible so that we maintain as much flotation as possible if we were to have to bail out of it. We're also going to make sure there is nothing running around here so that we won't damage our spray decks in case there were any scratches. The next thing we're going to do is make sure we have a bung, and also that we're going to have a look, like on the helmet, for any physical damage to the outside of the kayak. So if you see here, there is a bit of damage here, but that's nothing serious, it's just cosmetic, there's nothing to worry about here. And once we've I've checked this earlier, once we've run our way all the way around, you can see a couple of deeper gouges, but even those aren't anything to worry about. If you were concerned about a gouge, you should pour a little bit of water into the kayak near the area and leave it on a dry surface in order to see if any water seeps out. If it does, they can be repaired. They don't have to be thrown away. What we're going to do next, we're actually going to flip it over, as the underside is what maintains most damage, as you will be ramming it into banks and dragging it along rocks and possibly even dragging it behind a trailer. Now, as you can see, there are a few deep gouges like here, and there's quite a big chunk out here, but even that's nothing to worry about. So actually, this kayak is in very good shape. There's another deep gouge here. Then, when we're storing a kayak, you have a couple of options. For long-term storage, to avoid it warping, it should technically be stored on its end, like this. The other thing you can do is actually store it so here and here are the bits touching the rack. We don't actually have that system here. They sit slightly differently, but this works as well. Thank you very much.